The elders say that blood is thicker than water, but they also warn that if blood mixes with itself, it becomes poison. This is the tragedy of the love that nature forbade, and the curse that follows when a family tree decides to grow inward. In the village of Odumase, nestled deep within the Ashanti kingdom, there was no family more respected than the Mensa line. The land there was lush and green, kissed by generous rains and blessed by ancestors who smiled upon it. Among the Mensas, 2 children stood out like polished gold, Kwame and his younger sister, Esi. They were strikingly beautiful people, with skin that glowed like honey in sunlight and eyes that seemed to hold entire conversations without words. From birth, they were inseparable. Where Kwame walked, Esi followed like a shadow that refused to be cast away. They finished each other's sentences, shared each other's dreams, and moved through the world as if they were 2 halves of one soul. The villagers called it devotion. They smiled at the sight of the siblings holding hands as they fetched water from the stream or gathered firewood from the forest edge. But the gods, who see beyond the surface of things, called it something else. They called it an abomination waiting to bloom. As the years turned and childhood melted into adolescence, the innocent play between them darkened into something forbidden. What had once been pure affection twisted into a hunger that neither understood nor could control. They believed their bond was stronger than the laws of the land. They believed their love was a secret the night would keep, that the darkness would swallow their whispers and the shadows would hide their shame. They would meet beneath the great silk cotton tree, far from the eyes of their parents and the judgment of the village. There, in that sacred space where spirits gathered and ancestors watched, they made promises that should never pass between brother and sister. They touched in ways that violated the order of creation itself, believing themselves beyond consequence, beyond the reach of divine law. But in our land, nothing escapes the eyes of Asesia, the earth goddess. A taboo is not merely a rule written in the sand by men, it is a spiritual law woven into the very fabric of existence. When you break it, the earth herself recoils in horror. The land begins to speak in the language of drought and decay. First, the village stream that had flowed for generations began to thin, then trickle, then stop completely. The women who went to draw water returned with empty calabashes and worried faces. Then the yams, those sacred tubers that sustained the people, began to rot in the ground before they could be harvested. Farmers would dig into the earth only to find their crops turned to black, stinking mush. A sickness crept through the livestock, and children who had never known illness began to waste away. The priest consulted the oracle, pouring libations and reading the patterns in the kola nuts. The message that came back chilled every heart: someone has insulted the womb of the earth. Someone has planted seed where no seed should grow. The struggle that followed was silent but terrifying. Esi discovered she was pregnant, and the knowledge nearly destroyed her mind. They tried desperately to hide it, wrapping her growing belly in extra layers of cloth, keeping her confined to the compound, inventing illnesses to explain her absence from communal gatherings. Kwame stole herbs from the medicine man's hut, bitter roots and powerful leaves meant to wash away unwanted pregnancies. They prepared the concoctions in secret, and Esi drank them until her mouth was raw and her stomach burned like fire. But the child refused to leave. It clung to her womb with a supernatural grip, as if it knew that its very existence was an affront to nature and was determined to complete its cursed journey into the world. Esi's belly grew faster than was natural, swelling like a god left too long in the sun. Dark veins began to trace maps of guilt across her skin, visible even through her clothing, branching patterns that looked disturbingly like the roots of the silk cotton tree where their sin had been conceived. They were 2 frightened children now, trying to outrun a curse that was growing inside them with each passing day. They thought if they could just give birth in secret, they could bury the truth along with the evidence. They built a small hut deep in the forest, far from the village, where Esi could labor in solitude and where whatever emerged from her body could be dealt with away from witnessing eyes. That night came during the season of storms. The moon rose blood red, the color of rust and old wounds, casting an unnatural light across the forest canopy. Esi went into labor as thunder cracked the sky open. Kwame was there with her, his hands shaking, his face a mask of terror as he watched his sister, his lover, writhe in agony on a mat of palm fronds. She screamed, but it wasn't the cry of a mother bringing forth life. It was the wail of a person seeing a ghost, confronting the physical manifestation of their sin-made flesh. The baby came in a rush of dark fluid that smelled of decay. But it did not cry. Instead, it hissed, a sound no human infant should make, the sound of a serpent disturbed in its nest. They looked upon what they had created, and horror froze the blood in their veins. The elders would later say that the child was born with grey skin, the color of ash and death. Most terrible of all, it bore 2 distinct faces on one head, one looking forward toward an impossible future, one looking back toward the sin that created it. It was the physical manifestation of their tangled bloodline, a mirror held up to their transgression. In that moment, the earth began to shake. A violent tremor split the floor of the hut, cracks racing outward like lightning frozen in wood and soil. The land itself was rejecting the fruit of their sin, trying to swallow it back into the darkness from which it should never have emerged. By morning, the priest had discovered them. The village elders performed the necessary rites, pouring libations on the poisoned ground to cleanse it, speaking prayers to appease the outraged goddess. Kwame and Esi were banished, sent walking into the evil forest where those who break sacred laws are sent to be forgotten. They disappeared into the mist like ghosts, never to return, their names becoming a cautionary tale whispered to children who played too closely together. The lesson was etched into history: a river that refuses to flow into the ocean and tries to flow back into itself will only become a swamp, stagnant and breeding disease. A family tree must grow branches outward to touch the sky and embrace the world beyond itself. If it grows inward, bending back upon its own roots, it chokes the life from everything it touches. Blood, the elders remind us, is meant to spread and strengthen. When it circles back and mixes with itself, it becomes poison, and poison, once introduced, corrupts everything it touches until the earth herself must intervene to cleanse the stain. Don't forget to like and subscribe, cause this is the best storytelling channel you have ever came across. See you next time.